Let's begin with the purpose of this chapter, the symbols. Symbols add texture and go more into depth with the story, making it more interesting than it normally would. Without symbols, the story itself would be too straightforward and dull, preventing you from having to critically think about what you're reading, which is in itself quite boring. Towards the beginning of the chapter, Foster is implying that we all have vaults inside our heads, which allows us to collect more knowledge of the various symbols we encounter the more we read. The whole purpose of reading is to allow us to critically think and analyze text. That way, we're able to expand our literature experience and gain more knowledge as we go. Another point Foster wants us to keep in mind is that symbols are secondary. And although it may seem like symbols are the most important concept in reading a story, most of the time they aren't really necessarily needed. In literature, there are primary and secondary meanings. Primary meanings of a story usually include things such as setting, action, conflict, or otherwise known as surface-level information. Then we have private symbols, which has secondary meanings. When you see a private symbol, the only person who truly knows the meaning behind the text is the author itself. In that case, this is when we really have to rely on context clues and our instincts. Foster suggests that using the literal meaning of the word is the best way to go about it. However, keep in mind, if too many symbols are being introduced within a story, the plot may get lost. And as Foster mentioned in this chapter, think of it this way. If the novel is a complete disaster as a piece of storytelling, it can't be saved by all the symbols in the world. Learning to read symbols from one story will help you in reading other stories. Think of it this way. Everything you read now will help you better understand books you'll read in the future. As Foster goes on to say, page 3 helps with page 4, which helps with page 8 and 15, and so on. Here are a few things to keep in mind. Use what you already know. Understand that every work teaches you how to read as you go along. And keep in mind that you know more than you think.
Chapter 26 is called Is He Serious and Other Ironies. This chapter basically talks about how irony is used as a deflection of readers' expectations. It also talks about how other rules don't apply when irony comes into use, and irony doesn't work for all authors. There are 3 different types of irony that Foster addresses. The first type is verbal irony. This is when a writer conveys one message in the text but means the opposite. An example is when an author says something is as clear as mud because mud is the opposite of clear, or using the phrase, "Today's my lucky day," when something goes wrong. The next type is dramatic irony. It's irony that is apparent to the audience but not the character. One of the most common examples is in Romeo and Juliet. The audience knows that Romeo is still alive, but Juliet thinks he's dead. The last type is situational irony, a situation that turns out opposite from what is expected to take place. An example is a marriage counselor filing for divorce and a fire station burning down. Rain is usually a symbol for birth, restoration, and fertility, but in A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway, Frederick Henry has just experienced the death of his lover and her baby during childbirth. It's ironic because he walks out into the rain even though he has just experienced the opposite of what rain is a symbol for. The important things to remember from this chapter are that irony trumps everything and it overrules anything else happening in that chapter, and that irony is used to deflect a reader's thoughts and expectations of the future of the novel.